Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's episode of the Breakdown series takes you behind the scenes of a short documentary that I shot in a restaurant in Italy. I'll show you how it came to life, what worked and what could have been better. I'm Francesco Sangalli, a documentary filmmaker and cinematographer with experience in over 40 countries around the world. On this channel, I share my journey in professional filmmaking. Let's grow together. Pre-production. Every project, whether big or small, always starts with pre-production. In this case, it was a particularly well-curated phase, and I believe this made all the difference. It all began with a video call with Yuar, one of the owners of the restaurant. I wanted to understand their vision, their cooking philosophy, and the atmosphere of the place. Then there was the location scout. Having never seen the restaurant before, I wanted to check the lighting conditions, the available spaces, how many electrical outlets for the lights I had in the individual areas, and so on. To help me memorize everything more easily, I took some photos with my phone, so I would have some material to start working with. However, given that while the video world is mainly based on the senses of sight and hearing, and the restaurant world is based on taste and smell, I decided to go to dinner at Persica, the name of the restaurant, with my wife to fully understand their philosophy. This step was fundamental because it allowed me to definitely obtain the overall vision with which I wanted to tell the story of this place. So, once back home, I started creating a detailed production plan with precise schedule. Optimization was crucial as we had an ambitious goal to produce as much material as possible in just one day of shooting. In the end, we managed to create 17 reels, 40 photos and, of course, the short documentary we are doing the breakdown of. In the production plan, to make sure we wouldn't have to give up final shots due to any delays, I occasionally inserted bonus times, meaning time slots I left empty, to be filled only if we were, in fact, behind schedule. If we were on time instead, we could take a break or finish earlier than expected. And nobody minds finishing work earlier, right? One last step before preparing the equipment for the shoot was to do a pre-edit, selecting music that best told the story of Persica. Ever since dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about jazz music, because I felt it best represented their way of cooking, extemporaneous, creative, with a solid foundation, but open to improvisation. Let me give you an example. I'm vegetarian, and the menu didn't offer many options without meat or fish. Well, the chef improvised incredible dishes for me, creating true works of art out of nowhere. Just like a jazz musician. Finally, I selected the necessary equipment for the shoot. Since I would be alone, I preferred to opt for a lean and versatile setup. A BMPC 6K Pro with a Sigma 18-35 f1.8 as the main setup. I had also brought some other prime lenses, but in the end I didn't use them. As a secondary camera, used only during interviews, I had a Nikon Z8 with a vintage 50mm f1.2. The fact that I could record in 12-bit RAW with such a small body was a real advantage. For lighting, I had a 300-watt Godox and a 60-watt Colbert RGB light, as well as two small aperture MCs. Finally, regarding audio, I had a Sennheiser MKE600 mounted on the camera and Rode Wireless Pros that I attached to the subjects. But we'll see that better later, because now it's time to move on to production. The day of the shoot was Monday, the restaurant's closing day. This allowed us to work without the influx of customers and have more freedom of movement. We then did some additional shooting on Tuesday morning, taking a walk through the market. Like the restaurant, all the suppliers were also closed on Monday, so we had to film them the next day. Once the equipment was unloaded, the chefs started preparing the final details, while I shot static tripod clips for the documentary's introduction. Right from the beginning, all the pre-production work proved fundamental. If I hadn't already decided which music to use with the pre-edit, I probably wouldn't have known that I would need all these images for the introduction. To have greater accuracy in white balance, given that there were different light sources with different color temperatures in the restaurant, I always used a color checker. This small tool then greatly facilitated my work in post-production to have consistent colors. For audio, I recorded with a double microphone, a lavalier on the chef and a shotgun microphone for the environment. Unfortunately, the constant noise of the refrigerator, which we couldn't turn off, covered many of the diegetic sounds, so the main audio served mainly as a reference as I went on to recreate all the sound effects in post-production. Not having an easy rig available, I tried to replace it with the camera strap. Holding the rig Blackmagic with all the accessories with just my arms for an entire day would have certainly given me a bad backache. This is a little trick that can make a difference in similar situations. One thing I've learned and always try to remember is that camera and lenses matter, but light matters even more. Look at this example, shot with the same exact setup. Here the chef is sharpening a knife with the ambient light. Now look at how the image changes when I add a small light. And practically the entire documentary was shot almost exclusively with this light, a small 60-watt Colbert mounted on a giraffe stand with a 40 cm softbox. Having such a lean setup was essential, as I was alone in having to manage both the camera and the light. After, I conducted the interviews. For this setup, as I mentioned in the pre-production phase, I used a second camera, a Nikon Z8, with an adapter and a vintage 50mm f1.2 lens. I mounted it on a small tripod placed on a chair to keep it stable. To improve the audio, I put a sound-absorbing blanket under the interviewee, and here too I always used a dipole microphone for safety. Regarding lighting, I only used the Colbert, sometimes adding an Aperture MC as a kicker light to give a bit of three-dimensionality. Why not use the 300-watt light that I had available? Because, unfortunately, that one is only at 5600 Kelvin, and that light was too white compared to the diegetic lights present in the room. Given that the space wasn't huge and I wanted to give the two interviews different looks, I simply turned the camera 180 degrees between one and the other. This is a trick that often works. Even while staying in the same environment, with the same vibe, turning the camera 180 degrees allows you, in most cases, to have two totally different backgrounds. Finally, it was time for the group portraits. I wanted to capture their energy and spirit, so I tried to make them laugh both in the video and the photos. In the same way, in fact, I also took several photos intended both for their websites and social networks. During every break, I always continued to check the production plan. With the amount of content we had to produce, it was essential to verify that I hadn't forgotten anything. Post-production. The post-production phase began immediately after the filming. I edited the first 14 reels for social media and delivered them almost immediately. The next morning, I wanted them to have some material to share right away and to see the professionalism of the work. Before sending them, I sent some preview frames. I edited the other 3 reels in the following days. Then, I dedicated myself to the interviews. I separated the interviews intended for the social media from those for the longer video and tried to find a common thread that linked them. I had to eliminate a lot of material. Always remember, no documentary has ever gotten worse by shortening it. I then edited the coverages that seemed most appropriate to me and exported a first draft, which I immediately sent to the owners to get their feedback. While I was waiting for a response, I started working on the color correction. Having taken great care in pre-production and production phase, the color grading was a very quick step. I applied a conversion LUT on the final node, while on the first node I did the white balance, made easier thanks to the color checker, and on the middle node I only made small adjustments to correct any imperfections or accentuate some details. At this point, I let about a month pass. I needed to emotionally detach myself from the project to be able to look at it with fresh eyes. Then I took the editing back in hand, looking for new coverages that could convince me more than some that didn't satisfy me. Finally, I added all the sounds in post-production, sound effects, ambient noises, and I worked on the audio mixing for the interviews. What worked well? Certainly, having taken good care of pre-production, as this then made everything else simpler. The video call, the location scout, and the dinner were fundamental to fully understand the project even before starting to tell its story. Then, having dedicated the right amount of time to lighting made a big difference in the visual results. Given past projects, I was clear with the restaurant owners right from the start. I didn't want to rush. I preferred to deliver less material, but of higher quality, rather than trying to chase a schedule that would have worsened the result. Also, the choice to work with just one main light allowed me to be leaner and faster. Less is more, and never has this been truer from a work perspective. Too many lights would have distracted me and tired me out, more than necessary. Finally, thanks to a well-studied production plan with room for maneuver, I believed I optimized the shooting hours to the maximum, managing to get a lot of different content in a short amount of time. What could have been better? From the exact moment I got home and watched the footage, I realized that the second camera during the first interview was out of focus. This is really a trivial mistake that I absolutely should have avoided, especially because it would have taken very little to do so. By connecting the second camera to an external monitor, I could have controlled it remotely, and I would have noticed the error. Finally, I must admit that managing the entire production phase alone exhausted me. Although working with just one light was better than working with more equipment, having to manage the camera, the lights, audio, actors, production plan, and everything else left me really exhausted at the end of the day. Also due to the amount of material produced. Considering the fact that in just one day of shooting, I shot nearly 800 gigabytes of material, for a total of almost 3 hours and a half of footage. Perhaps having a gaffer or a camera assistant with me would have been better. Conclusions. Despite these small things that I could have improved, I must say that this was a project in which I had a lot of fun. I'm really satisfied with the final result, and knowing that I managed to do everything myself fills me with satisfaction. Mistakes, challenges, and compromises are inevitable in the creative process, but they are also what drive growth, both as professionals and as storytellers. If you are passionate about storytelling through film, don't stop experimenting, learning, and pushing yourself to grow. Thanks for watching this breakdown. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. To catch future episodes, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Let's keep exploring, creating, and growing together.